I'm here! Oh, I bet you were starting to wonder if you were ever going to see me. I am so sorry, all the technical difficulties we've had. And I know some of you are just finding your way from the original link over onto the new link. So we're going to give everybody just a couple of minutes to get over, and my team will tell me when everybody's over on this new link to start the class. Can I just say thank you so much for bearing with us and being really patient. You'd think we would be dab-handed it by now, delivering all these classes, but you can never hold, you never know when these technical problems are coming down the line. But all I will say is, you've waited a few weeks for this. I promise it'll be worth the extra 20 minutes. And I saw loads of people in the comments saying, oh, well, a little bit of extra prep time is not going to hurt us. For those of you who watched my Facebook preview earlier in the week, where I was explaining to everybody what we'd be covering, you might have seen, hallelujah, my class was the one with no homework. So we're going to be doing 2 cards in this class, and there was no prep work, there was no homework, and also my classes, I want them to be more than just, we're going to make a pretty card. I'm basically going to try and spend the next couple of hours imparting on you as much of my knowledge and understanding, so that hopefully you go away with this with a couple of beautiful cards, but also loads of ideas of other things that you could do. So these are the 2 cards that we're going to be doing. You've got all your kits hopefully from me. So what you should all have is, you should all have a set of our amazing Colorista watercolour markers. Now, we are going to be doing some watercolouring techniques in here, a few different techniques. Also, if we get a little bit of extra time, which I'll make sure we do, I'm going to give you a few little extra hints and tips and show you a few other little things that you could be doing. But then we're also going to be doing a lot of die cutting. So you've got 2 dies in the set from me here, 2 fabulous dies. These are the 2 that you're going to be getting. Now, you'll also notice, as well as getting these 2 dies, you've got this pack of stuff, right? Paper piecing hold and release sheets. Let me tell you, we're about to have a crash course in how to do paper piecing the easy way. Now, how I've decided to structure the class is we're going to start off with this card here, because it's not the paper piecing one. The paper piecing one is the one that takes a little bit longer, and I like to think is a little bit more relaxing, okay? So we're going to do the paper piecing one here second. So in this first one, I'm going to spend the first bit of time teaching you die cutting. I'm going to go right back to basics, because so many of us, we're just used to doing the die cutting all day, every day. You just go through it. But I'm going to take a step right back and talk about plate combinations and how to get the best results and how to get longevity in your plates, whether you're using a Gemini die cutting machine or whatever die cutting machine you've got at home that you're working with today, how to get the best crisp results and what makes the difference. So I'll cover lots of little hints and tips. So get your notebook out, get the notes section. I've been sent my book, by the way. How brilliant are these? Mine just arrived this morning. So get to the notes section, get your pen out, because I'm going to be giving you some little hints and tips for your general die cutting that'll be useful for all your other classes as well. Once we've done a little bit of die cutting, I'm going to teach you how to emboss with your dies as well as do your die cutting. And these are 2-part dies. They're one of our creator cards, a style of dies that we're really famous for. And then what I'm also going to do is we're going to do a little bit of very simple colouring in on this one. And I'm doing that, what I want to do is I want to get everything else ready and do the colouring in last, so that those of you who work a little bit slower, it gives you a chance to catch up. You might not get all of your colouring in done at the end, but it doesn't matter, you'll be able to catch up. Those of you who speed on ahead won't feel like you're waiting too long for everybody else. It's really hard when you're trying to juggle that, having everybody at different like speeds that they like to work at. So we're going to do this card first, and then we're going to move on to this one, which is your paper piecing card. So I'm going to teach you how to do those lovely watercolour backgrounds. We're going to be doing some watercolouring techniques. Then I'm going to move into the paper piecing, and then I'll take a call on how much time we've got left as to whether I manage to finish all the paper piecing or whether we cut some of the piecing a little bit short, so that those of you who want to watch, you could carry on with your piecing while I go through some of the other watercolour techniques, because those aren't part of the class. Those are just a few extra things that I want to show you, as opposed to extra things we're all going to do together. If you want to do them along at the same time and you've got some extra supplies with you, we're just going to use a bit of watercolour card and some spritzers, so you kind of can't go wrong. But I just wanted you to know exactly what to expect for the next kind of hour and a half or so. I want it to be enjoyable, guys. First and foremost, you're here to have fun. I am here at your disposal. So I've got my little phone set up so I can answer any comments as we're coming through live. I know most of you won't be chatting because you'll be busy crafting. However, there will be points where I'll give people time to ask questions, and I'll save those questions up and answer them for when I've got a little bit of a breather in the class. I want you to enjoy it. I want you to come away feeling like you've really achieved something, and I also want you to come away with a lot of learning. So I've got a lot of plans for the next couple of hours, right? Okay, Shake Crafting saying, let's get the party started. Vicky loves my energy. I've got plenty of energy, Vicky. I wish I could send it down the airwaves for you. Trust me, I've got plenty of it to share around. Upstairs Hobby Room's really excited. Linda loves the markers. Have you been having a little bit play with them already? She says, great kid, thank you so much. And Rhonda loves learning. Well, it's a good job, Rhonda, because you're in the right place. Right. Here we go. Are we all ready? So we're going to start with this one, guys. And what we're going to start with, first of all, is a little bit of die cutting. So I want you all to get out this die here, which is your trailing florals. Now, when you take it out of the pack, there's actually 2 dies in the set. And what you've got is, you've got this outer die, right? And then you've got the inner one. Now, if you use just the inner die on its own, it doesn't have an outside cutting edge, which means you can do things like, if I show you this card, let's have a little look to the front camera. This shows that exact die where it's being used, and it cuts into the front of the card, okay? The other, which means you can either do cards like this, or you can be cutting in and doing things like your easel cards, where you're cutting right through the card like that. Or the other option is you cut it out completely, which we're going to do with the front and the outside. That's the other die that we've got coming in this set, and then you stick it onto the front of a card. So do you want to cut in through the card like this, or do we want to cut it out and stick it on the front? Don't worry, I'm going to show you both options, right? So that depends on whether you use both of the dies or just one of them. So for the first one, I'm going to use them both together, and we're going to use it onto a little bit of silver card, because what we're going to do is we're going to cut these out, and this is going to form the top layer, that silver layer on our card when we do it. Now, Gemini, let me know in the comments who's got the most awesome die cutting machine ever. I'm using the large Gemini, but I'm using my Gemini Junior plate so that you can see that you could do them with either size of Gemini machine, okay? Now, when it comes to die cutting, we'll follow the instructions to the core of exactly how it says you're going to use it. You would use the base cutting plate, you would use your shim, you would use your magnetic plate. We're going to put the die on, and then the top plate goes on there. So just to confirm, your bottom plastic plate, then the shim, then the magnetic positioner. Now on your magnetic positioner, guys, I want you to put your die, so you're positioning it because you want the outer die and you want that inner one inside. And that, because we've used the magnetic, it stops it kind of going through the machine at a jaunty angle. We're going to use those lines to line it up absolutely perfect, so we get a lovely kind of square cut all the way around the outside. Now, I've said about square, but I've actually got a little bit of a tip. If you're using not a Gemini machine, don't put your dies in straight like this. Put them in on a slight angle like this. It doesn't, if you're using a Gemini, guys, you can do it straight. This is for people who don't have a Gemini machine with as much pressure. Because if you put it in on a jaunty angle, what happens is it approaches the machine. This is as the rollers are coming along, it cuts at different layers, so you don't get, it's not cutting as much at one time, right? So there's this. I'm going to put my card, we want to cut the silver side, so I'll put the silver side face down. And then if you've been really good, then what you're going to do is you're going to tape this in place so it doesn't move as it comes through the machine. You pop your top plate on, and then that is ready to go through your Gemini machine, or whatever die cutting machine that you've got. We're going to send it through, okay? Now, what a lot of people don't realise about dies is you can die cut with them, but then you can also emboss with them. So I've sent that through. And as yours is going through there, you'll see hopefully yours will look just like mine. It'll have die cut beautifully like that. I can take my card off and get rid of it. But now if you want to emboss it, we're going to keep that in the die. So I need my magnetic plate out. So what we're going to do is we're going to lift this off here. I'm going to take it off my magnetic. We don't need it on the magnetic anymore. And we're going to pop our embossing plate. I'm actually going to lose that outer die because we don't need to cut anything anymore, all right? That can come out. So now I've left that in the die, or I've left as much of it in the die as I can, guys. You know what it's like sometimes when you're trying to do it back to front, upside down for TV. There we go. Leave it in the die. If you put your embossing mat on the top, right, as though you're cutting into the embossing mat. Notice I've taken out the magnetic, that's the key. Take out the magnetic, replace it with the rubber embossing mat. Now when I send it through for a second time, the second pass embossers. Now quite often when I'm demonstrating on HSN and whenever I'm doing kind of quick demonstrations on TV, I don't take the time to do that as an extra, which is a shame because all of these dies are cut and embossed dies and they've got beautiful embossed detail in them, and you're losing that detail when you're not taking the time to do the emboss. So look, I've took this out, just going to use a little pokey tool to poke all these little pieces out. So just always give some thought to, is it got some nice embossed detail in that die? Because if so, you absolutely want to be doing the embossing as well as the die cutting, okay? Now I know for those of you who love your die cutting, that might have been a little bit of a teaching your mother how to suck eggs, but I know there's a lot of newbies out there, and it's sometimes nice to get these little hints and tips in these classes that people forget. You know, when we were a newbie, we didn't know all this stuff. So, you can tell I've got someone else tidying up, can't you? Just scooch that off the back there. I hope you guys have got somebody else at home doing it for you as well. Right, here we go. Oh, Kathy's saying the Gemini Junior rocks my world. Thank you. Rocks my world too. Right, so we've got the silver die cut. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to emboss, but not die cut. So I've got a little bit of white cardstock here. I'm going to do the same again, but this time we don't want our magnetic sheet in because it's too much pressure to die cut. So remember I said if you're doing the embossing, you want the embossing mat, not the sheet here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this in and I'm going to pop that over as well. So that's how we're going to have it. We're going to have our two dies together, and just so that they don't move, I'm actually going to hold them together with a little bit of tape, because the first time we did it we used the magnetic positioner. This time I'm having to stick them together, okay? So, slip the cardstock under. This is what we're wanting to emboss onto. So, I'm going to pop that round. I'm going to line that up on there. Okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to just pop the top plate on there and send it through. So, it's not enough pressure to die cut. What it is enough pressure to do is emboss. And that embossing is what we're then going to work with our pens. So if you followed that in time with me, if you're working along with me, we used the base cutting plate, we used our shim, then you had the magnetic, then we did it as though we were cutting into the magnetic, and then when I lift this off, what you'll notice is it hasn't actually cut. It's just gone part of the way through, right? Now, what I realised I should have done, it doesn't matter, we're live, guys, is I should have cut the exact size of cardstock to begin with. And I'm saying cutting it, I didn't actually need to have cut it with my scissors like this. I could have used just the outer die. So if I trimmed the outer die cardstock to the right place, then I wouldn't need to do this trimming section now. But you can see there, I have just trimmed it to the outside of the die cut. And then we've got that lovely embossed piece that we can colour into without actually having. Now I'm going to see if the team can get a little bit closer on here so we can do our colouring in. Now if you're just getting caught up, if you've been a little bit slower than I have, I'm conscious I'm a little bit of a Speedy Gonzales sometimes. Don't worry, now's your time, you can catch up on your die cutting. I'm going to just start and do a little bit of colouring. Now, those of you that aren't crafting along, those of you that are just watching and learning, now's a brilliant time to get all of your questions in, because I'm really good at multitasking. That's because I'm a woman. I got a wow in my ear there from my producer Liam. Yes, so now's a brilliant time. If you've got any questions about the die cuts, about the colouring, about anything that we're doing today, about anything in life in general, send them through and I will be able to answer them while we're going. And what I'm going to do, just so that you can all, those of you who are crafting along can follow along, you'll see these markers. We're just going to use them as markers to begin with. So you've got a fine nib. and you've got a brush nib. So just use whichever side's comfortable to you. I'm going to use the fine nib because what I'm doing is I'm colouring in just the raised section. Now, the beauty with this is it doesn't matter if we go over the lines a little bit, so you don't have to be neat because we're going to put that silver die cut over the edge. So kind of work up to the edge of the die cut. If you go over a little bit like I'm doing, it really doesn't matter. Now, someone's asking, even though these are watercolour markers, am I using a regular cardstock? Yes, I am, because I'm not doing a watercolouring technique with them. We're going to do a watercolouring technique next, which means I'm absolutely going to be using my watercolour cardstock for that lovely watercolour technique that's coming up next. But at the moment, because this is not a watercolour technique, I'm just using a regular cardstock, not a watercolour cardstock. Keep them questions coming, guys. I can answer anything you want. Right, now we're going to be doing some classes. Well, we're going to be doing some classes. We're going to be doing some work in this class a little bit later using the watercolour markers, actually to watercolour with them. But I'll be really honest, I had a little bit of an agenda here, a little bit of a plan, right? So people are always frightened. They're always terrified to do watercolouring if you're doing like watercolouring techniques. So I thought what I'd do is lull you into a false sense of security and do a little bit of colouring in with you, because do you know what, we can all remember doing colouring in like this when we were kids, can't we? So nobody's intimidated by the colouring in, nobody's frightened to pick up the markers and just do a little bit of colouring in like this. I'm going to get you all feeling comfortable with a little bit of regular colouring in like this, and then we're going to progress on from there to do some of the more advanced stuff. So it's a little bit like we're going on a journey. We're going on a journey, we're getting started, and we're building up as we're going on. So those of you that are colouring along with me, hopefully you're getting a chance to use some of these pens. Those of you who joined me on, was it Monday I did the preview? Yes, it was. Those of you who joined me on Monday, you might remember that we did the, I did explain to everybody I'd be doing some of the techniques, and a lot of people were telling me that they've been using the markers. They haven't been waiting for the class. They've been using the markers for other things in the meantime, having a little go as well. And you've got to understand, so we do a lot of different markers at Crafters Companion. Spectrum Noir is our brand that we're really well known for. Let's have a little look. I'll turn that round and do a little bit of colouring up the top now. Follow the same thing round. So Spectrum Noir is our colouring brand, and we do a lot of different markers. So we do the Colorista markers, which are like we call them our entry-level markers, brilliant for people who are just getting started. But then we also do aqua markers, which are more of our artist grade pens as well. Or the last class I taught here was we were using our tricolour aqua markers, right? So we do lots of different marker pens. All of the different marker pens we do have the same inks inside them. So it means that if you are progressing from one to the other, it's just the nibs that change as you progress on from one to the next. It's just the nibs that get more advanced to work with. The ink, we use that same high quality ink in every one of our watercolour markers. So this is a brilliant way, maybe with this one, to get you started. You can build up these techniques, you can learn as we're going, and then you can progress on as you get further, maybe start and treat yourself to some of the other watercolour markers and build up from there. But this set, the one that I've chosen to send you today, is nice because you get a lot of bang for your buck. You get a lot of colours in for the price of one pack, which is a brilliant way to have a full colour palette for you to be able to be working from. And that's what I wanted. I wanted everybody to have loads and loads of different colours to work with. But not only that, they're going to do all the same techniques as we can do with all of the markers. So I wanted you to be able to go, maybe you're going to go onto YouTube after all of these classes and have a little look at some of my other watercolour techniques that I've taught. What you'll see then is you'll be able to watch and think, oh, I've got some of them markers, I can give that a go. I believe I've done all that colouring in. I think I've got that. Now, I know some of you might still be colouring. So don't worry if you're still colouring. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to stop at this point for everyone else to catch up. I'll continue on with the class. Maybe if you haven't finished your colouring, you can just leave your colouring for now and you can always come back to it. So I'll show you what we're going to do next, but don't worry if you haven't finished all of that colouring, because that's something easy to kind of come back and get caught up with, maybe when we're on one of the other sections. Now, here we go. You see this here? If I take this now, you can see how that is going to go over top and fill into all of those pieces. Now, you got black card in your kit. I've used a bit of silver card. I use silver card in the finished one, and I actually think black looks a little bit stronger, right? So I want you to do that. In fact, you know what I'll do? I'll recut mine in a bit of black. No, I won't. I was going to say I've got a bit of black, but do you know what? I've got a bit of black card here. So I'm going to use a bit of my black card and I'll cut it. You guys can keep on colouring while we do another die cut, and I'll send it through another time. Look at that, right? So there we go. I'm going to stick that down with the black. I forgot that you guys had black. Right. So while I'm going through here, I'm getting some other questions asked, so I'll be able to answer some of these. So Colleen is asking, with the Gemini Junior, what sandwich combination do you use to emboss a stencil? Now, if you're embossing a stencil, it's exactly the same one that I've just shown you for embossing the for the die. If you want it deeper, I would recommend try first of all with a couple of sheets of extra card in, or you can add your magnetic. It's just really not good for your rubber embossing mat if you add that magnetic in at the same time as your rubber embossing mat. So we don't generally recommend it, right? Now, look at that. I'm going to take this piece out. I'm going to leave that in. We're going to go and do the embossing. This is the bit that everybody always misses. So it's good to just recap this for everybody who's still finishing on their colouring. We're going with your clear plate. We're going with the top plate. So now we've got the base, we've got the rubber embossing mat, you've got your project facing up into the rubber embossing mat, clear, and your top plate, and we're going to send it through again. Brilliant. Right, what other questions are coming through? Any options for people who don't have an embossing mat? I didn't know that there was any machines that came without. I suppose your manual ones don't. Yes, I can tell you what I did once. Homemade embossing mat. Get a bit of kitchen paper. You still call it kitchen paper over there, don't you? Paper towel. I knew you had a fancy word for it in America. Right, bit of paper towel, and just fold your paper towel up into 4 like this, into the same, and that will give you almost the same effect as your embossing mat. So if you don't have an embossing mat, do a homemade one with some paper towel. Brilliant question, Susie. Thank you for that one. Just shows as well, look at that. There's all them people who thought, oh, I never thought to do that. So it's, you know, no question's a silly question. I'm here to be asked these questions, right? Oh, do you know what? I've gone a little bit gung-ho on that. I've pulled the edge off. You're not going to go so gung-ho, guys, because you're not going to be trying to answer questions and do all this at the same time, all right? Watch if I lift this out. So we might be having a silver one after all. There is my lovely detailed design. Nancy's saying the marker colours are beautiful. Thank you, Nancy. Make sure all these bits are popped out. You know what? I might do a little bit of a repair job in it, because I think it's nice for you guys to see when I do things that go wrong too. Just have my die a little bit close to the edge. There we go. We're going to stick this down to here. So we're going to go over with the black like this, right? And then I will stick this little bit extra down that I've caught with my little bit of tape there. Stick that down at the end. Now, brilliant. You've all got opinions on how you're going to stick this down, right? Everybody does it differently. I personally use our dotty tape pens. And the beauty with a dotty tape pen is that the tape is only going to go where you've got something underneath. Now, if you don't have this, what you could be doing now is using your PVA glue. You might want to draw, some people put a bit of glue onto their hand like this and dab this in to pick the glue up all over the edge. Don't use a regular tape pen. If you think, oh, I've got a tape pen, I'm going to go and use that, unless it's a dot matrix pen like this, please don't. And that's not me saying you have to buy mine, because you can get other brands of dotty tape pens. It's just that the dot one means you only get dots of glue where you've got something behind, as opposed to getting dots of glue everywhere, okay? So look at this. I popped all my dotty glue on there. I'm going to pop this in place. Was this at this side? Yes. So I'm going to pop that down in place and just make sure that that goes right over top there of all my piece. I'm just using the little pokey tool there just to drop that exactly into place. And so, oh, I am going to put dotty glue on that bit. Oh, here we go. Now, now we're getting into something. Dotty glue down here. All right. So just be really careful. You've done like me and you've missed a little bit. Try and be really careful. There we go. So that's all going to go down there like that. And then I'm going to do exactly the same bit down here. So I'm just positioning that in place, making sure that I'm lining up my top die cut piece along with all of the pieces I've done underneath. All right. And then same along here, this little bit here that I've left out. you're just going to come along there like this, and that'll just finish that off. There we go. So there's your base piece on the card. Look at this, I've left this bit out. This is why you should be careful when you use tape like that, because then you're going to have to, there we go. Here's my little piece here, and I'm just going to feed this out. But do you know what, guys? It happens to the best of us. And you can see it's not just us professionals. We have issues as well when we're doing our projects. But there's always a way to fix it. And it's quite nice to be able to show people how you do that as well. So there's my one that I coloured in, all right? So we can see that there's that lovely panel. That is the panel that I'm going to use on the front of my card. So while you're all getting there, oh, I've got one question. Pooh in the Shoe is asking, why should we not be using our magnetic with the rubber embossing mat, okay? So this is the weakest material out of everything that goes through your machine. So what happens is when you've got too much pressure in your machine, whatever's the weakest material, it absorbs the extra pressure. So, and you'll do it one day, you'll put your rubber embossing mat in and you'll have too much pressure in, and all that happens is the whole mat goes really crinkly and damages and sometimes rips and falls out the end. All right, and you end up damaging the mat. Now, if you do end up with a crinkly mat, don't throw it in the bin. Just use it a couple more times and it will start to spring back close to where it was, but it'll never go back to exactly how it was. But just remember, it's the weakest material, so put too much pressure on it. It won't get stuck in your machine, because it's not like when you use a Gemini machine, if you put too thick of a sandwich through, it recognises and stops. It's because this absorbs all that pressure and it just crinkles under the pressure. Okay, so hopefully that explains that. Now, we've got our topper. Let's pop the die away here, because we're going to start with the watercolour background, okay? So what we're going to be doing, this is the watercolour background I'm going to teach you how to do. And to do that, we're going to be using the blue, the turquoise, and a little bit of that lovely purple as well. So peacock blue, aquamarine, and a little bit of purple. And you need a piece of watercolour card from your stash, okay? So I want you to get your watercolour card ready. And what we're going to do is, I'm just going to clean my mat. Do I have any wipes in here? Someone's got, yes, I've got one under here. Right, so always have these you know, since the pandemic times, I must admit I use these multi-surface wipes for everything. Make sure your glass mat's clear of adhesive. I've got little dots of adhesive all over from that last bit of the project, and yeah, you don't want that. You really don't want that, right? So now I've got a nice, clean, smooth mat. Now, if you're not working on a glass mat, you might want to use like a Teflon coated sheet, but don't work straight onto your work surface. Ideally, a glass mat is what we want to be working on here, all right? So here's what we're going to do. If I just pop this down, I can see I'm roughly working in this sort of surface. So I'm just going to mark it down here. I can see there I'm working inside that surface, okay? So here to here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to scribble a bit of these colours like this, all right? So I've got a bit of blue. I'm going to go with a little bit of the aquamarine in there, all right? And then I'm also going to go with a little bit of the purple, just a couple of little bits. So just a hint of purple, not too much. I know that looks like a big mess at the moment, right? You're going to get your water spritzers and you're going to go and you're going to have a little bit of a clip on, right? Now, just want to remind you all, those of you who are just kind of still catching up, that black card that I used, the finished card that I've done, I used the silver. You guys have got black card. After I did it, I felt like the black would stand out a little bit more. So I've put you black in your kit. So a little bit different. The finished card had silver, but we decided black would look better for you. That's what we've done, okay? So I've popped a little bit of that down there, all right? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my watercolour card and I'm just going to, if in doubt, put more water on, right? Let's get it all mixed together like this. Yeah, it's looking good, right? So I've got lots of watercolour on there. I'm going to pop this down and I'm going to pick that watercolour up onto the back of the card, right? So that now when you turn this over, you get that lovely kind of washed out watercolour card. Now can you see that's a very, very kind of light washed out. If you want a more intensive colour, you're going to put less water on. So let me just get a one. I want to show you the difference, okay? So let's get another piece of watercolour here. Let's have a look. Have I got a plain piece of watercolour? No, I've got right. So behind my wooden table, little table, And I'm just going to get a bit of watercolour card out here. Right. Nope, I've got every type of card except watercolour card in here. Right, someone's just going to get me a bit of... Oh, have I got some? I've found some watercolour card, guys. Right, let me just show you the difference between a really washed out and a really intensive colour one, right? This is brilliant to kind of learn. This is the different background techniques I was talking about, right? So now we're going to go a little bit of blue, same again. Yep, we're going to add a little bit of the purple. No, I'm coming to the purple, a little bit of the aquamarine, and then a little bit of your purple in there too, all right? So there's all of your shadings down. And then I'm going to add less water into this one. Oh, I might have to just add a tiny little bit more water into my spritzer. Oh, look, Jen's getting really excited. She said this is going to be so pretty. Victoria is asking what side of the watercolour paper are we using. It doesn't matter. It's the same on both sides, okay? So let's have a little look. So whereas I put loads of spritzers on this one, I'm putting less. You can see I've got less water on that one, okay? So let me just get my watercolour card now, and I can use less on this one. And now when I pop this down and pick it up, watch how much more intensive the colour will be. Can you see? Yeah? And if you want it, you can pick up the extra down here like this, and it'll all merge together. And we can pick up the extra here like this. And then whatever extra you've got, let me just get a piece of that, we can pick up some of the extra around here like this and make it a bit of a special effect. Isn't that looking fabulous, right? Now let me just go and show you. Don't waste this, don't clean this straight up, because what you can do is you can revive it. So we can go, do you know what? Let's have a little bit more blue in there. Let's have a little bit more of this, and let's go a tiny bit more of the purple. And then let's go with another revive on this one here. So again, a couple of spritz. Oh, Libby's loving the watercolour techniques. A couple of spritzes from there. So this is what we call a first generation pickup. A little bit like when you're doing stamping, all right? So there's your first generation pickup. And we can take off the excess around here. It also gives quite a nice effect. I'm just lacking a bit of colour down here, so I can pick that up. Yes, happy with how that's looking now, all right? And the great thing is you're never going to have two backgrounds that look the same, all right? And then I can use, let me show you a very, very washed out one again. So let's not add any extra colour, let's just add extra water, and now go and pick all of that extra up onto a larger piece. And what I love is, what I generally do is I'll have a sit for a couple of hours and I'll make a few different backgrounds, right? And I'll have loads of nice backgrounds. So let's just pick up a bit of extra colour around there. I'll pick these up and I'll do a couple of little background techniques. So now, if you look at what I've got very washed out, I've got not quite so washed out, I've got a medium intensity, and I've got a high intensity background. So all of those different backgrounds, all done from that same technique. And essentially, guys, remember I said we were going on a journey? We're starting off, oh, these aren't scary pens, we're just colouring in. Oh, now this isn't scary, she's just scribbling on the mat. Now, we've done some watercolour backgrounds. So you're building up different levels, okay? Now, what you can do is, while we're on, I'm going to show you one last background technique, okay? Let's pop these over here to be drying, right? And then we can come back to this one at the end. Now, what I want you to do, let's stick with the blue. So this is not for the card that we're doing, this is a bit of a bonus extra now, those of you who are crafting along. You might have remembered at the start, when we did the practice run on Monday, I did say to everybody, you might want to get some rock salt. This is what we're going to do with the rock salt, okay? So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to pick this up here, all right, there it is. So I'm going to pick up all of this extra, and this is going to be nice and wet, right? And actually, let's go with a little bit more. I think I want even more intensity of colour. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pick up my paintbrush while that's nice and wet, and I'm going to splodge some more colour on there. So I want even more colour, but we need to be nice and wet. So the trick with this is, okay, we need to be nice and wet with the colour. You want more intensity of colour, just scribble down Here we go. Scribbling on the background. Trying to get it where it's not wet. More intensity of colour, but must be nice and wet, right? So now that's wet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a bit of rock salt. We conclude you guys called it something different in the States. Let's have a little look. So you're going to pop the rock salt down there like that. Try and keep the paper quite flat, right? Yeah, the American in the room is telling us we've got rock salt, so that's all good, right? So I'm just dropping some of that rock salt onto the surface, right? So let's do a blue one, and then let's get another piece of watercolour card. It's on the CTV wall. Let's have a little look. Yep. I love that they think that's a watercolour card. Let me get a little bit of actual watercolour card. Right, watercolour card. So we've done a little bit of blue. I'm going to pop that to one side, and let me just get a little, oh, I bet you didn't think we were going to do all these inky techniques while we're on here, guys. Let's get messy, right? Should we do a nice, let's do a different shade. Should we do some of the oranges and lemons as well, right? Something a little bit different. So here we go again. Orange. And try not to get the yellow on the orange here, because you don't want to contaminate the different markers, right? So we're going to pick that up. Now you can either do what I've just done there and use, oh, have I got a nice clean brush? Yes, I have. Let's use a nice clean one for this, right? You can either go straight onto the mat and pick it up, or we can just do a pick up with our water now. Megan says she's loving watercolour like this, so free and artistic. You can either pick it up and go straight onto the base here, or we can do the Sara Special pickup. I'm going to do the Sara Special pickup, okay? So here we go. So we're picking up the Sara Special way. Yes, look at that lovely background. Isn't that fabulous, right? Want it nice and wet, and we're going to splodge some extra water, right? You can never have it too wet for this next bit of the technique, okay? So you want it nice and wet, and then get it, spritz it a little bit more, so we can be nice and wet on the base, and then for that to dry, it's going to dry with the rock salt in, all right? So we take that rock salt, pop the rock salt all over the base, and we're going to let that dry. Now, for those of you that didn't see the memo on Monday and didn't get the rock salt and are wondering what on earth I'm doing and haven't got any salt because you've just been and looked in the kitchen cupboard, don't panic, guys. This isn't integral to the project. This is just a little extra bonus I wanted to show you. So, while we're extra bonusing, you do need to leave it. The reason I've done it now is you need to leave it to dry, right? So I'm going to take these, I'm going to put them over here, and we're going to leave them to dry. So we can be starting to get on with the rest of our project now, and then we'll come back to those at the end, and we'll have a little look at what's happened to those. Right, I've got to tidy up, because as much as I leave a mess for the team to tidy up, they can't really come and tidy up in the middle of, we can tidy this up later, you know, but, oh, that's me water spritzer gone, right, here we go. So, let me just clear this rock salt down. I'm sure you're all keeping your work surface as nice and tidy as you're going as well, right? There we go. So, here we go. Here's the one that we've got that's dry. Hopefully, yours will have had a chance to dry as well now. So we're going to put our whole card together, right? So all I'm going to do is I've got my base card ready to go, and then I've got my matten layer that we're going to pop on top of it. Now, personally, I love to just use tape pens for matting and layering, and I use our tape pens, the Crafter's Companion ones, which are designed to be strong enough to do all of this sort of sticking. But if in doubt, another great top tip, notice I'm putting tape on here and tape on there, so that what I do is stick tape to tape. Now that way you get a really professional, perfect stick, because we have stuck the tape straight onto the tape. I mean, what I haven't done is cut my card the right size, so we'll just trim that off. Who remembers this when they first started card making? I'll stick it on and then I'll trim a bit off here and I'll trim a bit off there. Right, there's my lovely base. I've got my topper that we created that hopefully you've all had time to finish as well. I'm just going to use, now you can use some foam pads, you can use some 3D tape, whatever it is you want. I like I like nice big chunky foam pads because they're a little bit quicker to peel the backs off as well. So, but you use whatever it is you want. If you don't want to 3D it, you don't need to, guys. You might just want to stick it flat onto the base. I'm going to do a little bit of 3D sticking and we can pop the card together. Kirsty's saying she loves the technique, hasn't done it in years, thinks she needs to try it, revisit. And absolutely. Let me know in the comments, guys, as well. Is this pacing all right for you? Are you managing to craft along? Are a lot of you crafting along, or are some of you just watching and learning to come back to do the techniques later? It's good for me to know so that I know if you want me to slow down on the next card or whatever. So do let me know, and I'm following everything through, right? Oh, another little tip. Oh, look, I am full of them today, guys. Right, pokey tool, much easier to release the backs off your foam pads if you use a pokey tool instead of your nails. And if you're like me and you're always having your nails done nice, means you don't ruin your gel nail varnish as well, right? Extra little tip. Oh, she says extra little tip as she's getting that one off. I've got the patience of a saint, and those of you who watch me regularly know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm actually heading over to the States. I'm heading over your way on Sunday. So I've just managed to fit this class in before my flight. I'm fly over on Sunday morning, ready for a big HSN show on Tuesday. So I'll be over your neck of the woods. Right, let's have a little look. I'm going to mount that just on the front of the card. Now, it's up to you. If I was making this card at home, I would leave that now until I knew what I was using it for. I personally don't think you can leave it because it's not finished, right? So I've just done a little stamp of a hello sentiment, but you might want to do it as a birthday card, a thinking of you card, or just to say whatever it is. So don't you add your sentiment on. You go and add your sentiment on when you're finished and you're happy with it, all right? I'm going to add mine on now so that we look like we've finished the first card, because it looks unfinished to me without a sentiment on. But you can add yours however you want. So hopefully, lesson 1 out of the way. We've been introduced to those pens a little bit. We've done something that's not scary and coloured in. We've done something that is a bit more scary and had a scribble on our glass mats. And now we're ready to kind of go to the next level, and we're starting to do some paper piecing in the next card. So I'm going to give you all just a little 30-second breather. Get your stuff together. Have a little bit of a clear down. Who got their crop and create? I got mine sent in the post. I didn't get the full kit like you guys. I got the book and I got the cup. That's good. That's about an hour and 20 minutes. That's been nice and hot, and I took the lid off. So, right, I'm just going to have a little bit of a tidy down so we can all start the next class together, all right? Good time again if you've got any questions. Right, a couple of people are saying slow down a little bit if I can. I'll definitely wait a few minutes then just to let you all get ready and caught up. Cora says she's feeding the baby and watching. Could listen to my accent all day. Oh, thanks, Cora. It's a good job because I can talk all day as well. Let's have a little look. Robin's loved the watercolouring techniques. FL Crafty Girl is loving the class. Do you want me just to show you? Let's have a look. While we're waiting for everybody to catch up, I'll just go and just show you. I've got the one, for those who missed the sticky down bit, I've got the one that I'd pre-coloured, just in case everything went wrong, and I've got my one that I'd done in silver, so I can just show you again how we apply that on, just while everyone's getting themselves caught up. So with your dotty tape pen, guys, you want to go all the way around all the pieces, and notice what I'm doing. I'm always holding this. I'm not just letting it go because it will drag the card. So I'm just working on little sections at a time, always taking that dotty tape pen away from me, all right? So lots of tape all the way over. But what's brilliant about these is you only get tape exactly where you need it, all right? So I've got that tape all over the background piece. So now I can lift this over. Is this the line up for there? Yes, it is. Now what I did is I popped that one down from the corner first, and then I'm just going to manoeuvre this into place so that we make sure we get it stuck in exactly the right spot, so that when we're sticking it down, we cover all our die cut piece. There you go. And that's how, if you ever want to do any colouring, that's how I always want you to do it. I want you to emboss the base one. So you're just going to emboss it like this. You're going to colour over your embossed lines, because it means you can go out the line. If you ever did your base and then stuck the one over the top and then tried to go in with the pens, you're always going to get pen on your lovely top coat. We don't want that. We want something, we want the pattern to colour into, And then we're going to do the card over top of the base pattern. That's going to cover over all of our work, because if you saw that, it really didn't look too good at all before we stuck the card over. Doesn't matter, it looks perfect when we've finished. So there's another technique. All right, now let's have a look. Missy's saying love it. Pamela's asking if the recommended sandwich to emboss with a die cuts instead, what is another sandwich combo? You've got too much pressure, just take a shim out. So if you're cutting instead of embossing, you've got too many plates in, just try taking, and I would take out the least thick one, whatever it looks like. So whatever machine you've got, take out the least thick one first. And so all you're doing is, all the shims do essentially is add more and more pressure into your machine. The more shims you add in, the more pressure. The problem is, if you use too much pressure, the pressure goes into the outer plate, so that the outer plates then have to absorb it, which is when you get warpage. If you use just the right amount of pressure, the exact plates all the time, you'd never get your plates warped. You'd not never get your plates, but your plates wouldn't warp very much at all. It's when we put too much pressure. So when we've got thicker cardstock, or when we've got multiple layers of cardstock, or when you add an extra shim or something, that's when it warps. So if you do a lot of fabric cutting like I do, or you're cutting with leather a lot, my plates warp really, really fast because I'm pushing so much pressure through to cut through the leather. Okay, right, the watercolour card is smooth on one side and textured on the other. Which side takes the colour better? Both sides will take colour. It's up to you. Which one do you like? Do you like the textured side, or do you like the smoother side? I quite like the textured side if I'm doing backgrounds. If I'm doing things like paper piecing, which we're going to do next, I like to use the smoother side. Here we go. So much fun. Thanks for all the watercolour tips. You're my pleasure, Sarah. Kimberly, just watching as well. I'm supposed to be working on a report for work. That stinks. Do they not know you've got a really important class to be attending today? You tell them, Kimberly. Right. Hopefully that's given everybody a chance to do a little bit of catching up, because the next card that we're doing, where have I put it? Somewhere really safe. There it is. Hey, this happens, you see. I bet your tables are like this by the end of today. Right, we're going to have a little go at paper piecing. Now, paper piecing is the technique where can you see I've done blue in the background, and then what we've done is we've pieced in a little bit of the pink, we've pieced in a little bit of the yellow into the background, so we're going to piece in the different shapes. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by creating all of our watercolour background. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to transfer over. I'm going to take this one set away. I'm going to get my next set ready to come in. There we go, next set of dies. And we'll move over onto the next project. I've put you everything in there for both of these projects, so you should have everything to hand. And you need, again, a couple of bits of watercolour card. And it doesn't matter, you just need to make sure the watercolour card is like a bit bigger than your die is, right? This one's easy because it's going to be the background piece in the blue. And then these just need to be bigger, but it doesn't really matter, you know, it's the size is almost a little bit irrelevant, right? Krista is asking, how do the release sheets work? You're one step ahead of us. Ask me in about 6, well, you don't need to ask me. I'm going to be telling, about 6 or 7 minutes, we'll be ready to do that part, right? So first of all, we're going to start with our die cutting on this one. Now, just a bit of a recap from everyone from right at the start of the class, right? If we're going to use the sandwich exactly as per the instructions, what we're going to do is we're going to put our base plate, we're going to put the plastic shim, we're going to put the magnetic shim on there, right? Then what we're going to do is we're going to use that magnetic shim to position these two dies, because we want to cut it out and in. So can you see we're going with the outer one first and then the inner one, so that I can just eyeball it and make sure that frame is lined up on the inside of my die there, right? You're going to pop your black card over top, so it's straight over top. We're putting the top plate on as well, and then that is ready to go through your machine, right? So Kathleen's asking, what plates do I use for a 3D embossing folder? Now, we haven't got any 3D embossing in this class, but if you want to do some 3D embossing, it is your outer base plate, your magnetic and your plastic shim. A regular embossing folder is your 2 outer shims, right? Now, remember what I taught you in the first part of the class? We're going to take this off, but we're going to leave the die, we're going to leave the paper inside the die, because what we want to do is do the embossing as well. So you leave that on there. You're going to add on your embossing. Notice any little bits that are dropping out, I'm moving them out the way, because I don't want them to emboss somewhere where we don't want them. I'm going to pop the top plate on. Always make sure, if you're looking at your purple plate inside here, you should be checking your magnetic ones not inside. Very important. Don't have your magnetic and your purple plate through at the same time, because that's when I was explaining earlier, it will just, the extra pressure will get absorbed in your purple plate, which is definitely not what we want, right? So, here we're going to go and take this out now, and this is all going to lift up and just have embossed beautifully and be looking wonderful, all right? So there is our lovely embossed plate, and you're just going to take your pokey tool and we're going to do this now. Sounds like Ruth's excited for the paper piecing. She said she loves paper piecing. It's like doing a jigsaw puzzle. Ruth, you're going to love it even more when I show you how this hold and release foam works. Kay said she loves the paper piecing as well. Well, it's a good job, because that's what we're all going to do. And you know what? I feel like I've hit you with quite a bit with the watercolour techniques there. So then what we're going to do is we're going to slow it down a little bit. So we're all going to take our time and do some nice relaxing paper piecing. And you're all going to go away and say, I did a class with Sara Davies and it was lovely and relaxing, and everybody's going to go, what? Sara Davies from over in England? I would never call her lovely and relaxing, and they're not going to believe you, right? So let's have a little look. Remember, I've got bits of dotty tape all over here now, so I'm just going to keep tidying that up as we're going. Right, so there's my nice black piece in the background. And now I'm ready to create a few of my watercolour backgrounds, okay? So first watercolour background. You can do it how I did it before, right? In fact, I'll show you a couple of different ways. Let's start with the blue one. So let's get the blue out and let's scribble down just the blue here. And let's, oh, do you got blue? No, I might go aquamarine actually. Quite like the aquamarine. I might go with a paler blue. So I'm going to scribble down my aquamarine. This is the beauty of it. Look how easy that was, right? Scribble that down. I'm going to have a little bit of a spritz, not too much, and then pick that up onto the background of here, all right? So that's one way. And then if you want to go and pick a little bit extra up, look, you're just picking up the extras around the edge. And this is going to give you a nice kind of mottled effect. And we'll go, I quite like that mottled effect one. I'm going to hopefully show you a few different ways to get a similar background. Yeah, I'm liking that. So that is similar effect to the first one we did, but slightly more textured. I'm just going to take off that. It's quite a big excess piece there. There we go. There's a nice textured background colour. There's my first one. And let's get that cleaned down and go for the second one. My others are starting to dry, by the way. Do you want to see how they're getting on? So here's my other one starting to dry lovely. There was my multicoloured one. That looking amazing. Some lovely background patterns there. And then there was the paler one that was like the second generation. Just nice and subtle in the background, okay? This is the one we're using for this card though. Back in the room, Sarah. All right, so there's my first one. And then, so here we go. I'm going to take my second one. And then I'm going to go with, let's go with a little bit of pink this time, right? I'm going to go with some pink. This is going to be for our flowers, all right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of colouring here. Yep, same again, bit of a spritz. And then I'm going to pick up my nice pink one onto the background here. Right. There we go. So can you see I've got more water this time? So the more water means we get a slightly more washed out colour, and you're going to get less texture. So I'm adding the texture in with this one. All right. Here we go. So can you see I'm just adding all that texture in? Lovely. All right. Okay. Going to clean that up as well. And we're going to go and do our third one. So the third one, I'm going to use a little bit of yellow. So I'm going to get a nice clear, because we want to make sure that we don't get any of that watercolour dye on here. There we go. And then yellow is the third one there. Oh, I'm going to use the other side. So now I'm just a bit of yellow. And we'll do the same, just the same there, right? So here's my third one. And this is quite nice. I want you to do it nice and relaxed. Right. There we go. There we go. All over the background. Apparently, I'm getting all these comments, people saying I'm just adorable. What's the context on that, guys? I mean, I'll take that as a big win. A lot of love for the accent. That's all right. Ashley says I'm dying. Does that mean like people are hating this? I'm dying, or like, or is it drying, or what? I don't understand what she's saying there. Right. Okay. Guys, I'm going to have to tell you this. I've got. Can I? Right. So I was starting to really panic here. So I'm getting all of the comments through from my team onto my phone here. And I've just had a comment that says, a lot of comments about this just dying. And a little bit of inside me like died. I was like, oh my God, I thought people would really like doing this. The class is dying. And I thought, that's it, you're all on mass exodus. Everybody's leaving. My class has died. There's only 10 people watching it. I was devastated. And I'm just like, what's going on? What's going on? Apparently it's drying. So, right. Right, here we go. Right, so here's our backgrounds. Oh, do you know what? And while I've been telling you that tale, they've had time to dry, right? If in doubt, though, you can always get your heat gun out and just give them a little bit of a blast, because you want to make sure that these are really dry. Right. Right, so here we go. Make sure, by the way, when you're drying your watercolour card, dry it from the top and dry it from the bottom as well. I know that's it, you think, well, why do I need to dry it from the top? But the card's wet all the way through, guys. So if you ever get issues with your card warping, you can avoid that by drying it from the top, drying it from the bottom, all right? Here we go, right. I'm trying to do that whole thing of going a little bit slower so that you can all keep up. Let me know in the comments, is that working? Is this pace working for everyone? And I'm ready. We're going to paper piece these two, but we're going to paper piece into this one, right? So the first thing I want you to do is do you want me to show you, for those of you who don't have a tape pen, I've got the luxury of a little bit of time. I can show you how you would do this with your tacky glue, because I've shown you how to do it with the dotty tape pen, but I'm going to show you. I hate this technique. I'm just going to be really honest. I see other people doing it, and it absolutely cringes through me. And I'll show you why. What they do is they put a little bit of glue onto here. Let's have a look. People are all laughing, saying, you're so sweet, we're loving you, Sarah. Denise is trying to make me feel a little bit better. She said she's having a blast. Thank you, Denise. So my class isn't dying. We're all good. We're all good. No, there's lots of you watching. Let's have a little look, guys. I'm now spilling glue all over after me dying panic attack. Right, here we go. Right, I've got glue on my hand, right? Spread it out a little bit like this, and then look what you do. You just dip in your cardstock into the glue. So can you see we get glue all over the background? Now the reason I don't like this when I see people do it is because you have to then get all of this off your skin, right? So all of this excess glue that you've got on your skin, basically you wait for it to dry and then peel it off, and it looks like you've got peely skin. So I've always hated this technique when I've seen other demonstrators do it, but I'll be really honest, it's a lot quicker and easier than sitting with a fine tip glue applicator and popping glue all over the back of your card, right? So if I get all of this down here, now when I stick this on, all right, this is going to just go down here, and I'm going to pop that down, and that there, look at that. As much as I hate this, because we have to clear this up now, right, that has given me a perfect all-over stick. And if you do get any glue oozing out, you don't need to worry because it's PVA, so it's all going to dry, right? Christine says, I was planning on watching right from the start, and I'm glad I'm not crafting along. This is so entertaining. Christine, I'm supposed to be here to teach your craft classes. They'll not have us back if I'm just to laugh a minute. Right, here we go. Right, I'm going to get another. I tell you what, it's a good job I had a whole pack of these, right? So, yes, you're going to clean this up off your hand. Oh, there we go. And then we're going to clean this up off the back. Right, so there's my background. Nice and ready to stick, all right? Carrie's dying laughing. Don't tell us you're dying, Carrie. I cannot cope. No more dying. That is not the word of the day. We're having a nice time. My class is not dying. You're all waiting for your backgrounds to dry. Nobody's dying. We're all good, right? Here we go. Right, let's pop that to one side. Who's ready to do the paper bit? Who wants to know what on earth these sheets are all about, right? Yes, now we're talking, Sarah. So, just going to clean up all that. Do you know what? My husband would be in stitches if he was watching this now, because I'm not this clean at home, but I'm obsessive about keeping my craft mat clean, right? So this is going to one side. This is our hold and release foam. So, the trick is it's hold and release. So, get yourself a sheet of hold and release out, and what I want you to do is I want you to peel the backing off, which is the bit with Crafter's Companion written on, and what you'll find is it's tacky. It's not sticky, it's tacky. We don't want it sticky because it's holding things until we want to release them. That's the whole trick, right? So I've peeled the background off. I'm going to put my yellow piece on. I'm going to put my pink piece on. Right, and then I'm going to cut this in half because we're going to use both of these. I'm saying I'm going to cut this in half. My scissors are somewhere. Right, here we go. Right, straight down the middle. Right, there we go. Now, die cut. Let's get our dies cleaned out. Now, we only actually need to use the inside piece of the die because we don't need an outer die cut for this. So I can take this and just go right into the middle like that. Okay? So die cut, we're going to die cut the first one. You're going to die cut both of them. I'm going to go into here. Now I want you to cut it like it was a normal cutting sandwich. So we're cutting through the cardstock into the base. We're going to go with our clear plate on the top. We're going to go with our magnetic, and then we're going to go with the top plate. Miss Crystal says, no one's dying, we're still on all above ground and laughing with you, Sarah. Thank you, guys. It's a good job. You've got a whole day of this, haven't you? Who's coming up next after me? What's your next class you've got? I'm never quite sure how the schedule works. Are you straight on, or do you get a loo break? Do you get time to go and make a cup of tea? And yeah, I didn't know. Right, so we're going to take this out, right? And you're going to be really careful to lift your die off, but leave that. You got it, right? I'll come and do the yellow one in a bit because I'll show you what we're going to do. Then what you're going to do, now we don't actually need, I can cut all of this excess off because we do need it. All right, so if I just cut, and it's just for easiness for you guys being able to see what we're doing. Oh, I'll leave that bit, right? Watch now, I'm going to peel that card back off, right? So I'm going to take this, I'm going to peel it back off, and look at this, all the little bits held inside on the hold and release foam. That is the genius part of this, right? So the hold and release foam stays in place and it keeps all those little bits. Instead of you having to pick them all out, I might just go, I need to just get the edges. You've got to, once you get going and lifting a bit, there you go, then it's easy to lift the rest of it, right? Probably should have left myself a bigger border, it's easier to pull off, right? But I only need to get round the flowers. So can you see I'm leaving myself, I'm going to peel that background piece off. There's the inner bits of the flowers, that's what I needed. So I've got those inner bits of flowers, right? And I'm going to do the same down here. Has everyone had that aha moment looking at this? I'd be, oh, I wondered what she was going to do. I wondered how it worked. Oh, we've got comments, it's magic, it's awesome, it's brilliant. Yes, it is, because look, it's held all of that stuff exactly where you needed it, right? Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to use the flowers for this one. Let's go and do it again with the yellow one, right? And then you see what we're doing. So, same again. Let's take the yellow one. So you're going face down. We're doing the same sandwich as before. So your base plate, you're going to go on with your base piece of yellow. You've got your clear, you've got your magnetic, then we're going to go on with the top plate, all right? So that's our regular sandwich, and then we're going to offer it into the Gemini, and it's going to cut all of that out. And what it does is, it cuts the top, it cuts through your card and it'll cut into the hold and release foam, but you don't want it to quite cut all the way through because it's got to hold them in place, all right? So you don't change the sandwich, it's just all to do with the density of the foam, right? So lift your die off, none of the pieces stay in. This is where paper piecing is a nightmare, when you have to lift them out, right? Peel this off your backing sheet, right? So I'm going to leave the border here so it's a little bit easier for me to peel. There we go, watch. So I'm pulling this all out now. Pulling all of this bit. So basically what you're pulling off is what would have been the die cut, and what you're leaving is the bit that's left, which are the pieces that would normally just fall out and fall by the wayside, right? So what, incidentally, what you get left with is this should look like what the die does. And you know what it does there actually, can you see? I mean, to be honest, if we straightened that out, if I'd done a slightly better job of the bee, and we'd straightened that out, you could probably have used that as a die cut piece. And I think I'll lift this yellow. I don't need to lift this off, but I think it's a little bit easier for you guys to see if I have lifted it off. This is all the waste out of the centre, because all we're really interested in now is all these little bits. Now, here's the good thing. You've got 2 projects to paper piece here, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the yellow from the yellow from these bits in my paper piecing, but I can save those flowers in the yellow to use on another project. And then the same here, I'm going to use the pink flowers here, but I can save the inside bits of the honeycomb to use on another project. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense. Jodie saying, great product for me to use. Miss Crystal says, this is awesome. It is indeed, Miss Crystal. Right, now I'll trim around this because we don't need all of this background excess. And now we can start on our paper piecing. All right. So let's get all of this out the back there. Now, for the paper piecing, all right? So here's this one here. So I did say, those of you who were watching on the Facebook Live, this is the best thing you can get yourself for paper piecing. So it's just a little fine tip glue applicator. You might not have this exact one at home. You might have another fine tip glue applicator, but anywhere where you can apply little tiny fine bits of glue like that is perfect. Because watch what I'm going to do. Let's do this flower around the outside. So we'll get in nice and close, and you can see I'm just going into the middle with a little bit of glue inside every single piece, all right? And then all we're going to do, once I've got my glue in all the little pieces, I can come in here and I can use my pokey tool. Let's pop that down there like that. I can use my pokey tool, or you can use a little pair of tweezers. I believe I've got a little pair of, trying to decide which tweezers I want to use. Look at this, I've got some pokey ones, I've got some duck-billed ones. I think I might try and use my pokey tool. Yeah, look at this. So you can pick, no, I can't use my pokey tool. We're going to have to use the tweezers, right? So you can pick these up, and because you're looking at an exact replica of the piece in front of you, right, I can make sure I know that goes exactly into there, right? Now, have you all got your hold and release form? Have you managed to get the cut done? So are we all now ready to start and do this paper piecing? Because the good thing is, this can take as much or as little time as we need it to. I think it's a lovely time for us. I can be answering any questions, so any questions that come through from people, but you can be watching me paper piece, you can be paper piecing along at the same time. Those of you that are just watching and learning and not crafting might have some questions now. I can take questions, either about the craft we're doing or about any other crafts. There's a couple of different questions have come in, about paper piecing, whatever it is. And it's a good time for anybody else who wants to kind of catch up. They can just catch up on the rest of the project up till now. And it really is, I have to say, of all the different facets of papercraft, paper piecing is definitely one of my favourites, because it's really relaxing. I love to paper piece, and I love colouring. And I love colouring when you've got like I love alcohol pen blending, when you don't have to do any thinking, when you just pick up one pen and everything's going to come from one pen. All right, there we go, is the next one. Okay, so Alison says this hold and release paper is an absolute game changer. Look at that, Alison. You would never, ever have embarked on a flower like that if you didn't have the hold and release paper, would you not? And I'm going to keep going on the next one. It really is a game changer. I think I read Miss Crystal's out, didn't I? She said it was going to make it so much easier. Let me know what you think, team. Otherwise, I'm going to talk to myself for the next 10 minutes. Which I'm more than happy to do. I am more than happy to do. I can tell you anything you want. You can ask any questions. But I'm going to be happily just putting it. Oh, do you know what might be nice? If I do the middle of my flowers with the yellow, right? So here's my yellow piece over here. Is it this piece down here? Hold on. Let's just put the B. Yes, B down there. So watch this. I can come in. And I can pick this one up from here. Come on, hold and release paper, there you are. That's going to go exactly into there. This is the good thing, paper piecing, it's lovely. But, oh my word, if you're not... I hate it as well when you've got all your bits ready to paper piece and then you come to put it together and you're missing one little bit and you're looking for it on the floor and you can't find it and you end up die cutting a whole extra piece just to get that one bit that's missing. You all know what I'm talking about. We've all done it. Well, we've all done it. If we've all those of you who do paper piecing, this might be a brand new technique for someone. If it is a new technique, how fabulous that you've learned how to do it. You haven't had to have the years and years of pain that the rest of us have had of trying to paper piece like this. You can just do it the easy way and benefit from our experience. Look at that. And I love how they all just fit perfectly into place like that. All right. So all these little individual pieces. Sarah, can you go over the embossing layers again? That's Angie Nelson. Right. Embossing layers. Can I go over the embossing layers? I'm not quite sure what you're asking there. Are you wanting me to explain how what we used for embossing, what sandwich we used? Or are you asking the question of, can we emboss more than once? So I'll answer both, so I can cover off every eventuality, right? So if you are asking, which is the sandwich that we used for embossing, I can tell you that because I'm not focusing on my paper piecing at all, and I am a woman who can multitask, because that's the statement I made at the start of this class, and I am sticking with that. Right. So embossing. When we were embossing, just the die cut, and so in the very first project, we embossed it after we die cut it. So if you're doing that and you're embossing after your die cutting, you're going to take out the magnetic sheet and you're going to add in the rubber embossing mat. So really important, don't have both of those sheets in, all right? Might put a tiny little bit of extra glue in here because it's starting to dry already. If you are asking how you embossed, what was the next thing? Oh yes, we just embossed for the one that we coloured in. So that one there, you're going to use the same sandwich. So you're going to use your outer cutting plate, and then on top of your outer cutting plate, we're going to place the whatever it is you're embossing, your paper. We're going to put the embossing mat as though we are cutting into, so that you've got your paper and your die, the embossing mat as though we're cutting into it. And then from there, the last thing you do is you're going to put your top plate on there. So that hopefully answers that question. Last two little bits that are going to come in here. This is coming together really nicely, isn't it? Just loving that. And do you know what I like? Because we just didn't use just regular pink paper, we've used the watercolour card where we've used the... Oh, look at this tiny weeny piece that's going in. Oh, that I haven't got any glue in. There's no way I would have got this in if I didn't have that paper. We would have lost that ages ago. Look at that. Straight in there. And then all these, and because it's just PVA, I'm just easy to take that away. Isn't that lovely? Right, I'll keep going on with the next one. Oh, brilliant, got some more questions coming in. So, expressive paper, if you had a smaller die, could you reuse the stick and release? No, not really, because it's, you can't reuse the same bit. I haven't said that, look, if you had a small, I could probably cut the middle out of there. Yeah, you could, yeah. And if that's what you're meaning, we could take the middle out of there, and we could absolutely add another little bit from the, another little mini die and a little piece onto there. What a brilliant idea to be really thrifty with your hold and release paper. You've got a whole pack in there that you can work from, but it's a brilliant product, isn't it? It makes die cutting, and it's an absolute game changer when it comes to your die cutting. Right, which one's this one? Are you going in there? Once you get started on them, it's so easy to follow them all through. I'd love to know, out of all of those of you that are watching, roughly how many of you are crafting along and how many of you are just watching and chit-chatting. I'm going to guess from the little bit of chit-chat, the fact that I'm not getting much chit-chat, loads of you are actually doing the crafting at the same time. What I am going to do is I am going to check in a little bit later on and see how you've all got on with your cards. So I'm going to be back in this group a little bit later. You know, you don't have to post your picture straight after the card. If you've finished, or if you're happy enough with the result that you've got, pop it in straight after, and I can come and have a little look and see how you're getting on. Or if you are not crafting along live, if you're just watching it and learning, and you're going to have a little go over the weekend, pop your picture in over the weekend. Or if it's on Facebook, you can always tag me as well on Facebook. I'm just Sara Davies CC, and then I can see your project and how you got on with it. But apparently it's quite 50-50 we're seeing from people who are watching and then those who are crafting along live as well. So I bet a load of you saw it was me and thought, oh my word, I'm not going to be able to keep up with Speedy Gonzalez over there. Little did you know I would be adapting my style and doing something relaxing like paper piecing. But you didn't see that one coming, did you not? So loads of people saying it's quite therapeutic watching as well. Well, I'm pleased. It's I find it really therapeutic, this sort of stuff. That's why I was happy to do to take any questions at the same time, so we can chit chat. Nothing too nothing too strenuous that I have to think too much, so I can keep thinking about my project. Would you do me a favour and read me those questions in my ear, Liam? So, because lovely Ashley's sending them through. There we go. So I'm just going to get them, and they're going to ask me them in my ear, so I can focus on my paper piecing, and I can still do all of your questions for you guys. So someone's asking, with the salt on the paper, that technique that I showed you just before, do they need to scrape the salt off the paper now or wait till it dries? No, you absolutely want to wait until it is completely dry. So I'll be really honest, I'm not confident that the ones we've done are going to be dry before the end of the show. So I did a batch on Monday after I told you that I was going to be doing this, and I've left them on the side in the studio here to dry all week. So they've been, I mean, they were probably dry by Tuesday, but the sentiment I've got is they're not going to dry in the hour or so that you're waiting for them. You pretty much want to do them a day before you want them. You want to do them and then leave them to dry. Or overnight is ideal, if I'm being totally honest. Overnight would be perfect, and then you can come back to them. Now, Kathy's asked, when do you need to use the narrow side versus the wide side of the watercolour markers? Kathy, it's completely up to you. Now, if you notice, when I was doing it on the glass mat, I was using the big wide side. And I just find that is a little bit easier when we're scribbling down onto a glass mat. So whenever I'm doing glass mat work like that, I always use the wider side. If I'm doing colouring like that very first project I did where I coloured them in, then I like to use the finer side because I like to have control over the pen. And what you'll find is the hardest thing to control with your markers is your brush nib. So a bullet tip, this is why most of the like introductory starter kit markers are all made with a bullet nib as opposed to a brush nib. And it's the, you know, as you progress up, then you move on to the brush nibs. So we've actually put a brush nib in here because it's what people seem to want. But I can tell you now, it's a little bit harder to control. So give yourself a little bit of time, build up to it, and you can start with the bullet nib and then work up to your brush nib as you get a little bit more confident. Someone's asked, Tabitha, she's asking, when you remove the salt, can you reuse it to do the technique again? You can, Tabitha. I think you're being a bit of a cheapskate because that salt is super cheap. I'll tell you what I do with mine. I keep it, so because what you'll see is it's going to take on a lot of the colour. So I actually keep the salt, and then I use the salt as I don't use it as salt anymore, but I use the salt in my shaker cards. So I use it as like a lovely shaker card insert for with your coloured pieces, which is much nicer than just reusing it because it's very inexpensive. And the good thing is not only is it, can you get a second use out of it, but shaker pieces can be really expensive. So it's nice to make your own brightly coloured ones nice and easily. Right, here we go. So here's my last one. Sue Lynn's asking, why do we emboss the what, sorry, Ash, was that? The frame part. Why do we emboss the frame part? Right, it wasn't the frame part that I embossed, Sue Lynn. It was the, I embossed the whole piece, and it's to get all this little detail. You'll find that a lot of the dies that we create, as with a lot of other companies, I know you've got so there was a Spellbinders class coming up as well, and their dies are beautiful, and they do the same, really lots of detail, and there's detail built into the embossing, as well as detail built into the actual dies. So I always say it's worth doing that little bit extra and running it through a second time. It only takes another 10 seconds or so, and you get that lovely detail in your embossing there too. Look at that, I'm so loving how that's coming together. All right, and then I'm going to do the same down here. Now Janice is asking, does my glue tip not dry while I'm working? I'm always having trouble with it. So I don't actually find that. I wonder why you're having that trouble with yours. Is it a fine tip glue applicator like this? So, I mean, mine's not coming apart there, but I can always just pop the fine tip glue I can pop the fine tip back into it if I need to while we're waiting. But yeah, I don't find that mine does. Let's have a little look. I'm going to lose the pink out now, guys, and bring the yellow in so that you can see me working from the yellow. I'm liking all the questions coming in, by the way, guys. This is nice having someone to chit-chat to other than myself. Apparently there's a lot of love coming in for my shaker card top tip. Don't worry, as soon as we finish this project, we're going to be getting those back out and seeing how it's going, and you'll be able to see that firsthand for yourself. Do you know, it's all these little hints and tips. It's not just the fact that we've learned about like this awesome paper piecing tape and how to do paper piecing and things like this. It's the fact that you've picked up them little tips about, you know, what sandwich combinations to use for all of the different dies, embossing folders and things like that. There's always, that's the beautiful thing about these classes, and don't be frightened with any of the teachers to come in and ask different questions. We actually love it when people are into our class enough that they've got loads of other questions for us. You know, make the most of us being here. I know I can't speak for everybody, but I know most of the teachers that are teaching this weekend that I know the ones that I know would all tell you the same thing. They really love to be able to you know, impart their hints and tips, and we don't always think what you're thinking, so it's brilliant for us to know, you know, what sort of ideas you've had, and we can follow from there. We can what might seem like a silly question to you, there could be another 100 people out there thinking the same thing, frightened to ask it. Right, I might give that little butterfly some wings as well while we're on. There we go. And the thing is, there's no way, I've just called the bee a butterfly, haven't I? There is absolutely no way you would have been able to piece all of these bits in had you not had that hold and release paper. Absolutely no way at all. Yet look how good it looks that we've done all of this now. And it's up to you how much paper piecing you do. I tend to find I start really keen, and then I'll get fed up after a while. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, yo, I don't want to do the inside of that bee. You know, I've had enough with these little fiddly bits of the honeycomb. That's enough for me. Now, Catherine from Scrapbook and Cards is watching while she's waiting for a flight. Have a safe flight, Catherine. I hope you're off somewhere nice. Yes, safe travels. That's, like I said, that'll be me on Sunday, flying over to the States. So, and then lovely Liam, who's in my EE, flies on Saturday. He's coming out, keeps me right on this side of the pond and on the other side of the pond. Look at that, it's coming together beautifully. I'm going to do the little one down here as well while we take the last few questions. And then after this one, I'm going to go and we're going to put the whole card together, and we're going to have a look at how our salt technique stuff's coming together. All right, there we go. So notice I am putting this time, I'm getting a little bit keener. I'm putting a load of my glue in. I know I'm probably being a little bit too keen. The chances of me getting that, maybe shouldn't try and do quite so many at once. Oh, look at this. Sometimes it's easier. Less haste, more speed. Now, Jodie is asking, what is the name of the glue that I'm using, and does it come with the fine tip? Right. Yes and no. So I am using the Collal tacky glue, okay? And then I've used our fine tip glue applicators, and I've decanted the Collal tacky glue into the fine tip glue applicator. So they don't come together, but you can get both of this, the tacky glue and also the fine tip glue applicators, and they're the two that I kind of marry up together. So just go and check them out. Collal, they're, in my opinion, the best makers of a wet adhesive in the world. They are based in France, and they do awesome adhesives. I only use Collal adhesives when it comes to wet glues like this. And that fine tip glue applicator is a one that we've designed and made to work with that tacky glue, because we were using so much of it, and we found that a lot of it you need that fine tip glue applicator. And the companies that do glue with the fine tip glue applicator, I didn't think the glue was as good as the Collal one, so hence we ended up using Collal's glue but bringing in our own fine tip applicator, if that makes sense. Do you know, I'm really in my flow now. Don't know about you guys, who's paper piecing along in the comments? Well, not in the comments, who's paper piecing along? Let me know in the comments. I have found this incredibly relaxing. Lovely way to spend a morning. Look what I did there. I was really good. It's the middle of the afternoon for me here, but I know it's the morning for you guys wherever you're watching. I know I was your first class of the day today. Apologies again that we were a little bit late getting started with those technical issues, but it seems absolutely fine. Everybody's been able to get up. You had a little bit of extra time to get ready there. Wonderful. Is that good? Should we put our little butterfly that's not a butterfly, that's really a bee's wings in as well? And then I think we're quite happy with that paper piece topper and ready to go. And you know, it's really difficult when you're preparing classes like this to try and think of what's a technique that people won't have done before or might not have done for a long time, and what's going to be different to what other people are teaching, and you know, trying to come up with something. And I just felt like paper piecing was something that you don't see an awful lot of, so it's nice to do something that's a little bit different. And then the fact that I knew we had that hold and release form that I could order for you, it meant that I could show you a technique that's lovely, but you could do it your own way and have a different and unique product. That looking lovely. So then all that remains really is to pop it onto your card. So literally, I'm going to keep this because you can use them, the yellow bits on another flower. You could use your other pink bits if you wanted on something. And then what I'm going to do is, I've just got a little bit of yellow cardstock, and I'm going to mat and layer it flat, and then I'm going to stick it on my base card. So it's been a lovely relaxing project to do that one. Nice little wind down to get you started. Shame I was so engrossed I wasn't sitting drinking my cup of tea at the same time. That would have been a ultimate wind down there, wouldn't it? Now you do your cards whatever size you want, guys. You know, I've just done these a slightly tiny little bit larger than the base card that we're working to. But I think, you know, if you want to take them, I'm going to show you a couple of other different cards that you could do with these same dies. And I want you to take all of these techniques and adapt them. Now, Annie's saying, Sara, you've done wonderful, both on the last Crop and Create and on this one. Well, I'm pleased you guys have really enjoyed it. I love being part of them. Do you know, I've got a whole team of teachers here at Crafters Companion. We could... there's loads of different techniques we could teach you, not just me, but me, and I've got, you know, Leanne's one of our colouring tutorial experts, Craig's one of our experts in the business here. So I'm glad you're enjoying the techniques that we bring you from Crafters Companion, and you feel like you're learning something a little bit different. Now, I've got just a nice, simple sentiment. I've gone with Blooming Beautiful. Again, you use whatever sentiment you want. I've used the black card again. I thought the black card looked really good on this one. And that just finishes that off quite nicely. And I just gone with a generic sentiment for this one so that it could be for any different occasion, you know, whether it's birthday or thinking of you or whatever. There we go. So there is how we do a lovely bit of paper piecing. And I think that's come together just nicely. And I know not everybody will have got the whole of the paper piecing finished left. You've still got a good 10 minutes to go, guys, before you need to start getting ready and thinking about your next class. But I just thought that would be a nice little hour's kind of wind down as it was. Linda's saying the watercolouring was really fun. Julia's asking, do you ever run the complete card front through your machine to squish the whole front down? Well, I did it once and I regretted doing it because I'd put too much glue on, and what happens when you run it through to squish it is it squishes all the excess glue out, and I ended up with gunky glue inside my machine. So I've never done it since. What I could do, I suppose, is once you've let them dry, so for example I had a spare one in case I didn't get finished, and that one I've let to dry, so I could run that through now, but to be honest I don't think it needs it. You know, it's quite nice to have that little bit of texture on it. So Karen's Creative Cards, what else can we do with the hold and release sheets? Well, you can hold and release anything, Karen. I haven't used it for anything other than paper piecing, but if you come up with things in the comments, I would love to hear all of your ideas. Pam said it's really pretty, thank you. Joanne's loving the techniques, thank you so much. Jill's found it really relaxing, loves it. Rebecca's loved the class. Melanie's relaxing with a piece of coffee. Should we check in on our projects and see how they're looking, all right? Let's have a little look. So, these here, right. Oh, I think we're starting to get enough, right. So this one here, not quite, it's not quite dry enough. What you don't want to do is force dry it with your heat gun, all right? But if I rub this salt, oh yes, you're going to get enough of the effect. Look at that there, right? So can you see, when we leave the rock salt actually absorbs some of the water, and it just interferes. Can you see that effect? I'll see if they can get really close on that. That is the effect that you're looking to get with that rock salt. So it just gives you that lovely kind of mottled effect. Now, because that was quite light, because we sprayed a lot of water, it hasn't picked up an awful lot of the colour. Let's have a little look at some of the other ones that I'd got ready. There's a little bit of a pink one I'd prepared here to show you. Rubbing that rock salt off just leaves you that little bit of colour there. The one that I did with all of the coral on, not quite dry enough yet, this one, but I really want you to see it. Oh, it looks really, really well with that orange. Look at that. Doesn't it look good with the orange? I think that's a lovely one. So, there we go. And you know what? These are nice little techniques. Just remember, because I know a lot of you will be putting a lot of pressure on yourself. There, can you see? We've got a little bit of orange in here. Great for your shaker cards. That is the effect I was wanting to see you get. How brilliant is that, right? A lot of you'll be putting all this pressure on yourselves to get all these classes done, to do all these learnings. And what you've got to remember is, it's actually just sometimes about the techniques. So maybe you got the rock salt, maybe you had a go at this, but you haven't actually got all the paper piecing done. Doesn't matter, because you've learned a great technique then. Maybe you're really happy with your background. Save that and use it on another card. I didn't want to incorporate that salt technique into one of my cards today because I couldn't guarantee that you'd all have it dry in time to use it. That's dried significantly well, but I couldn't run that risk on you having done that, and it was a little bit too complicated to do as homework. But if you've learned how to do this technique, that is absolutely something you can be applying to some of your other card making tutorials or scrapbooking or any of your other type of backgrounds that you do. I've got a really nice background swatch here actually that I can show you that just shows all of the background techniques that you could be doing, okay? So I'll get the salt out of the way. So this is if we're taking, so if you just scribble it onto your glass mat and then wash all over the background, you can go really intense with the colour or you can go really, really light with a nice pale shade, right? This is if you're doing two colours. So for example, and actually this is a good one to show you because if you notice I put a third card in the book, not for us to get a third card done today, But I did a third card using exactly that technique. So in the third card, we did this background. I'll show you the third card. That's the card that's in your book. It was just a little bit of, I just wanted to put a little bit of a bonus one in there, and I wanted you to see how to do it, right? But if you're wanting to do a background like this, watch what we do. We're going to take a couple of the pens. So I've got the rose pink here, and I've got the yellow, right? And I'm going to use my open-ended like this. I'm going to do a bit of a scribble down. I'm going to do a little bit of a scribble down of the rose one. And we're going to start. How long did I let the orange one sit? Miss Crystal's asking. Wow, that's what time did we do? It was about an hour ago, wasn't it? So pretty much an hour ago, right? So I've got the water onto the base here, right? And then I'm going to start with the yellow, and I'm going to wash that yellow onto the background, right? So just the wetter the base is, the lighter the colour it'll be, but the easier it'll be for you to blend, okay? Then I'm going to pick up the darker shade, and I've got my darker shade on there, intensifying that colour, and then washing it down and merging it into the yellow as well. All right, you can always add extra layers. You can always go darker. It's hard to make it lighter. All right, so there's my, I'm going to wash these two together again and into that lovely yellow. All right, so there, as you can see, how you get that lovely ombre effect. Once it dries, that's the one that I've just let dry, and I've added that little stitch effect around the outside, and I just use that as a background on a super simple thank you card. And the thank you card there, so this you can do with any of the dies that you've got, sorry, not any of the dies, you've got any of the stamps you've got, right? If I take this stamp set out, great technique to know this, not a lot of people realise this about watercolour markers, right? But if you take your stamp, and what I'm going to do is, I've got like a nice, just got a stamp platform here. Did you know that you can stamp directly onto, you can use your ink pads as stamps? So if I just pop this down over here, and we're going to stamp onto here. So I'm going to use that coral pen, and I can actually just colour in all over the background of the stamp. So this only works with watercolour pens, guys. You try and do this with alcohol pens, they dry too quickly. So, but your watercolour pens have a slightly longer open time. So all you're doing is you're colouring over one of your stamps, okay? So we'll colour all over the background like that. And then all you're going to do is you're going to take your water spritzer, you're going to give it a little bit of a spritz like that, just to keep that, or you can just, if you don't want to spritz it, you can huff on it, by, as in like a ha, you know what I mean? And then we're going to stamp with this, and so you'll see I can get a stamp. So I've just used my watercolour marker as an ink pad. So brilliant top tip, you can use all of your markers as ink pads as well. And you can see with that one there, I knew we wouldn't get 3 done, but I wanted to give you a, you know, just a few extra tips. Lovely how you can create those lovely shaded backgrounds. Lovely how you can stamp with them. And you can see I've just done a nice simple composition for you in the booklet. So that is your third one that you've got in there that you can go, and if you want to do some extra in your own time, you've got an extra little project on there that you can work with as well. Right, let's have a little look. Right, can I just say, it's the 17th birthday. Is it today? Oh, I don't know. Apparently, it's Scrapbook and Cards Today's 17th birthday. Do you know what? They must have started right around the same time as us. We celebrated our 17th birthday back in October. So we're 17 and a half now. So yes, a very, very happy birthday. I know Catherine's been watching before she jets off on a flight. Can I just say thank you so much for having me. It's been such a privilege to be part of what is such a phenomenal event worldwide. Hopefully you've learned a good few techniques. We've learned the, if I just go right back to the beginning, that lovely card that we did first of all, we learned how to do the embossing with your die cuts, how to do a little bit of colouring. We did those lovely backgrounds, and I showed you the different ways you could create some of the different backgrounds on there. Then we moved on to the second card, and with that second card we did the paper piecing. So again, we learned how to do those lovely kind of washed out background techniques, and then this time use them to do, you know, picking up some of our ink colours and then use that hold and release form to do all of your paper piecing in there. I think it's been nice to have a little go with some of those techniques where we've done the salt backgrounds, for example. You've now learned how to do your wash backgrounds too, where you wash the different colours with your watercolour markers. You've learned how to do stamping with your watercolour pens. You've got that whole set of watercolour pens to be playing with. Now you've learned all these little techniques, all that stuff to be doing. You've got loads that you can be doing with those 2 dies. If you want more cards that you can be doing with your dies, hop on over to our YouTube channel at Crafters Companion, just put the name of the die in, have a search, and you'll see some extra projects with those dies, so loads to get you going. I know you've got a jam-packed few days ahead with all of the other classes, so I hope this has been a nice kind of easy introduction, a nice starting point. I've loved it. Thank you for being so chatty with me, keeping the comments coming through. It's been lovely to be part of such a wonderful event. I hope you have a great next few days. I will be in the group checking up. I want to see the photos. I want to see how you've got on. I want to find out which techniques you've done. I want to see when you've mastered that rock salt technique, the paper piecing, whatever it is. I'll be in there keeping a check on you all, and have a wonderful next few days.